I went to flying just about the middle of 1942. Our squadron was in Midway before the battle, and but I wasn't with them. I was at Pearl Harbor, thank goodness. They pulled out all the PBYs out of there because you couldn't stand their fighter pilots. They're too good. This is a PBY, a very versatile aircraft, because we could land in bays and lakes, rivers, not to mention the ocean. The function of the aircraft, of course, was to go out ahead of any of our forces to see who was there. And then we would radio back and tell them the enemy is here or not here. And the crew consisted of 3 pilots. One pilot was PPC, that's Patrol Plane Commander. It's the #1 pilot. #2 pilot, and #3 pilot. And they were all navigators as well. That's why we never got lost. And I'm seated behind the pilots as a radioman and or radar. Me and another radioman, we used to trade off. And then we had 3 machine gunners on either side of the aircraft. We had 50 caliber machine guns in the blisters. We used to call them the waist hatches. And these blisters were always manned by 2 mechanics. Then we had a position up front, which I, as radioman #2, I would have to go up there, and we had twin 30s machine guns. But you're from here to the waist up, you're out in the open. Now that in itself is not bad because we never flew over 90 to 100 miles an hour, but you had to wear goggles. Then we had a guy, a crewman, at the tail end of it with a single 30 caliber machine gun, and he could open the bottom part of it and he could see into the water or somebody trying to attack us from underneath. So we were well formed. Luckily, we were never attacked by aircraft because we used to make sure that we didn't get within range when we'd fly day patrols, because the seaplane could not put up with the Japanese fighters. There's no way we could win. But we'd sneak in and check, get low on the water, and then pull out. And my function was communications with whatever base we were close to. And with radar, as the war went on, we would locate enemy ships, and we learned to attack them at night because we painted the PBYs black. And we were known as the Black Cats. And we would attack at night with radar. And hard to believe, and no one ever mentions it, that we sank more ships, more tonnage, than any other aircraft that we had. One of the big nights that we had there, our main pilot, Mr. McGinnis, we spotted this big convoy on radar. There's a bunch of blips on radar. And Frischberg, the #1 radioman, says, "Mr. McGinnis, I have a big convoy 80 miles away, whatever." The pilot said, "How many?" He says, "Well, it's covering the whole screen." And McGinnis, a man with real guts, he says, "When we get close to them, take me to the biggest one." Well, I thought that's the end of me, because the biggest ones are always in the middle of the convoy. And what's going to happen, if we go to the middle of the convoy and drop bombs on the biggest ship, what they used to do is automatically start firing straight up, knowing that they're covering the area. The Japanese gunners are not aiming at it because they can't see us, but they do know that we can run into their gunfire. So I thought, well, that's the end of me. And Frischberg took him to the biggest one. And we dropped the bombs and we set it afire. But McGinnis, being a genius, I call him a genius because the only reason I'm here is because he's such a good pilot. Instead of pulling out and getting caught by their gunfire, he went between the ships. But that's dangerous too, because in a convoy in the middle of the night, you can run right into a ship because they're level. But he pulled us out, and once we're out of range, he pulled us out, and we could see that thing burning way at a distance. And I didn't see it, but they claimed that it was a troop ship. And our pilot, McGinnis, got a medal for it. We all got air medals and all that. Because if you get the Japanese out in the ocean, they're not going to be in a bunker on some island killing our guys. I was already in Miami. This picture was taken in Miami. We're being decorated. The two Marine Corps pilots, this is 1944. That's how long it took for the information to get to the base. They had dive bombed a carrier. So they're being congratulated by the captain of the base. And I'm getting an air medal, and our squadron got the Presidential Unit Citation because we did so well. So in getting to this day, I'm proud of that from the viewpoint that McGinnis was so good, and I had a part of it. But as the war went along, we got even more and more with the Japanese for what they had done to us at Pearl Harbor, because now we were just about even. Even the Guadalcanal campaign was still, they were preponderant. They actually had more aircraft, more ships, more everything. At one time there was 14 Japanese carriers and we only had 2. And of course then we had our squadron and a few others. So we did, if you want to call it revenge, we did. We used to attack convoys, and I always used to get a little satisfaction out of that from the viewpoint of, let's see how you take it. We took this picture in Townsville, Australia. I'm the third one from the left, and we used to get at least 2 weeks off because of the rigor of flying at night. We needed some time off, believe it. And we're marching down the middle of town, and we had a photographer take this picture. This is me, of course, and the crew. I'm here, and it looks like I'm eating walnuts. And we're in Perth, Australia. We had just landed there. This is when I came home after 4 years. I used to fight primarily, believe it or not, because somebody didn't like Mexicans. And, I had to defend myself. And I didn't know that I could fight. I didn't know that I had a punch. A punch is a gift. And I could hit you and hurt you. So I went to Miami. This was taken in Miami in 1944. And I said to the chief, I want to join the boxing club. And he said, well, what we want to do, and here I am. We used to go not only fight in the Navy and the Marine Corps, but we used to fight downtown Miami. They'd put another name on you, you'd fight civilians. And that was to prove our manhood one way or the other. I stopped fighting because I had an attack of malaria, me and a lot of other people. Before the war, I used to box with the two black stewards. Now the stewards, sadly enough, all they did was take care of the officers, their laundry, their food, and everything else. And but I used to like these two guys, Lawless and Quinn, and we'd go to the gun deck and work out all the time. I learned something about fighting from them. There was racism, very heavy, on the side of the guys out of Texas and the South. And they didn't like me boxing because I'm a radioman with these two niggers, as they called them. And I used to like them because we had a good time working out. We had a lot of racism. And we had to fight sometimes, some of the guys that didn't like the black guys and didn't like me because I liked big band music, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, and all that. And they used to call it nigger music. Well, maybe out of 100 guys, I'm using that as a figure, maybe 25 guys didn't like me. And to me, I had no idea that racism was so deep. When I went in the Navy, I thought, we're all sailors, are we not? But it existed, and the black guys told me, it's always there. Lawless told me one day, we got through with a workout, and he told me, it's in my little narrative, a very sad story of being a young man in the South. And he says, Pete, you don't know what it is to be black, especially in the South. He says, you have to get off the sidewalk when a group of white people are walking towards you. And you don't dare look at one of the white girls in the eye. She's like to holler rape, because it was sort of a fashion. And so I left. He told me he got in the Navy to spend 20, 30 years in the Navy and get a pension. But he was complaining that during maneuvers, we all have a battle station in addition to being radiomen and mechanics, whatever. But they were not allowed to be fighting men. And in my narrative, I say that the day of the attack, 1941, December 7th, they, like everybody else, became fighting men that day. They passed the ammunition like all of us. And from there on out, I think it decreased because we needed everybody to be ready. And it was November of 1945. Of course, the war had ended 2 or 3 months before. I decided I wanted out because there's a whole world of things to do. And I came out with the idea of going into business because we'd been so poor that now's the time to do it. But I didn't know so much about business. And you had to learn the hard way. I started working at night as a bartender. I worked nights so I could work in the daytime. And as I learned something, I started building, like, we'd buy a house and build 2 units in the back. But I'd be working at night all the time because you can build 2 units in the back of anything and there's no money coming in. It's all going out. At the time, nightclubs were a big deal. See, this is 1953, I think. And I bought this nightclub on Sunset Boulevard called Club Sarape. And I called Eddie Cano because Eddie had been with a small combo in this place where I was tending bar. And I called him and I said, Eddie, form a band and come to work for me. And he formed the greatest group you ever heard. He used to draw people just automatically because he was brilliant. And Eddie Cano and his band were an attraction. It's all you needed. So we were doing a big business until the State Board of Equalization got wind of it. And in those days, State Board of Equalization, now this is nothing I dream of. I know owners that had to give the State Board of Equalization like so much a month, just to stay open. The way they closed me was by pulling Eddie Cano out of there. What they do is pull out your dance and show permit, and all you have left is a bar upstairs. It's no longer a nightclub. After the nightclub, I lost whatever money I had into it. And my partner had quite a bit of money. He didn't have to worry, but I did. So I had to go to work as a bartender at night. And we came down to San Clemente and we bought, San Clemente, California. We bought a seven unit apartment right there near the ocean. Well, we made enough money that I could build a motel there at San Clemente, and Nixon was there. And I built the motel. It was the San Clemente Motor Lodge. And what we did then is I built it with the idea of working with the Nixon people. I connected with a guy that was in charge of renting rooms for the Nixon group because Nixon had the Western White House. And when he used to come into town, there was nothing there, no rooms available to anybody. Well, I built the only new motel in town that was air conditioned. And you can imagine people like Walter Cronkite, they would stay up at Newport at the big hotels. But the engineers and the bodyguards all had to stay close. So I used to get most of them. And when Nixon was there, I had a full house all the time. Then when Nixon resigned, then I sold the place. But because he was a good part of my business. And being, as they say, being an entrepreneur, I went into other things. But the rooming business is a great business. That's how I happened to buy the Patriots Motel. I bought this motel in San Clemente. Used to be Brisa de San Clemente. And I had this idea after seeing the wounded people the first day of the war, that someday I'd like to do something for the wounded wars. Well, subsequent to that, we got Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East. And at the motel, I changed the name to Patriots Motel for a reason. Not only does everybody understand Patriots Motel, but I had people drive in and say, what's this Patriots Motel? They thought it was connected militarily. And I would tell them what it's about. I'd give an envelope with a stamp with Wounded Warriors, Florida, writ large, big print. If you put $5 in there, I'll only charge you 60 for the room. And you mail it. You're in charge of mailing. Don't give me the money. And that was the hook. I even had one woman say to me, well, I'm glad you told us that because there's so many scams nowadays. I said, no, you put money in there, you take it to your room, you save $5 on the price, but that $5 will go to the Wounded Warriors. They would put in the $5, we'd seal it and say, here, you mail it. Well, I presume I remember this guy to this day, Mr. Olson, put $50 in there. And many people would put in 10, 20, and I would only charge them 60 instead of 65. And from what I gather, I sold the motel, because, you know, at my age, it's tough to run mom and pop motels. You're up at 2, 3 in the morning. We average around 7,000 a year. But now I'm taking this program into the internet, and we're going to go throughout the nation asking people to donate a portion of the commission that the hotel pays. They $15, $20, whatever they pay a commission to Expedia to get them the client. We'll give a third of that, at least a third of that, to the Wounded Warriors. Now, my daughter, Alexandria, added another one that's really great, Wounded Warriors Families, because back again to December 7th, when the boys are wounded, if they survive, they may be minus a leg or an arm, whatever, but they are, they've got 20, 30, 40, 50 years to live. And at that time I said, if I can ever do something really, and I hit it, and that's when I bought the motel, changed it to Patriots Motel, with the idea to prove or disprove the point. I knew the American public is very patriotic. If you ask them to do something, but if instead of paying 65, they only pay 60, and $5 of that is going to the Wounded Warriors, you got a winner. I was married 1947, the latter part of the year, to Marie Werner, and extremely beautiful young woman. And we had 4 children. We lived in Downey, then we moved to Gardena, and from Gardena, she said, why do we live here? Let's go down to the ocean. So we did. That's how we went to San Clemente. But we had 4 children, Martin, Lavinia, Peter, and Alexandria. And they're all doing very well. But then at the age of 88, 89, I'm not unhappy at all. I'm like Bill Sanchez. We're very lucky people to live this long under the conditions that we had been through. And it's been a good, my wife died in 1997. And after 50 years of marriage, we were married 50 years. I miss her a lot, and I got the kids, and I have my work now. I'll be working for the Wounded Warriors. We're going to go nationwide with this thing, and you can imagine doing, when I say doing 1,000 rooms a day, different hotels, motels, casinos. I have the trademark on Patriots Casino, and we have Dominion on Patriots Hotel, Motel, and Travel. So we presume we can do 1,000 rooms a day, and if we can donate $5 per day in perpetuity to the Wounded Warriors, it's something that I would really, I would go out with a smile, believe it.